Happy holidays, everyone. It's that time of the year where you have to stress out about what presents you're giving to other people while listening to the same Christmas songs on loop
over and over again.
Anyway, what better video to debunk on Christmas than Christ himself?
So a few days ago, I'm scrolling through the comment section of this channel, and I came across something that left me speechless. At first, I wasn't sure if this was serious or if it was just a joke. The comment claimed to offer 10 ways to prove that God doesn't exist.
Yes, one of those videos that debunks a YouTube comment. It's a source of infinite content, isn't it? Honestly, if I were the one that left the comment, I'd feel pretty special if someone dedicated an entire video to me. Something just makes me happy knowing someone else spent hours making a video on something I wrote in minutes. Not to mention that comments are very often low effort. That's why I don't respond to comments on my videos, because they're usually incredibly low effort and poorly written. Anyway, back to the topic of the video. You'll see later on that this atheist doesn't really do a good job. And that brings me to a main point. If you're trying to engage in debate to represent the side of logic, reasoning, or science, be sure you're presenting good arguments, because otherwise you're doing more harm than good. Alright, let's see what this is all about.
Proof number 1. The fact that a human being has to tell you about the existence of your God proves there's no God. We would be born with knowledge of its existence. The first proof offers the first fallacy. It's called a non sequitur. The conclusion just doesn't follow. Human beings have to tell us about the existence of all kinds of things, but that doesn't prove that those things don't exist. For example, teachers tell terrified students about fractions, but that doesn't prove there's no fractions.
You're actually both wrong here. Brian's argument is a weak one, but you're also misunderstanding the intention behind it. Yes, a teacher telling students about fractions does not mean fractions don't exist. Similarly, just because a human being has to tell you about Christianity does not mean it's not true. However, Brian is trying to draw this as a contradiction to the way God is portrayed. Being all-powerful and his hunger for recognition in the Bible, he would have made it so every human being knows of his existence from the moment they are born. But of course, I think this is a terrible argument since it tries to infer God's intentions based off the Bible and often misses how Christians actually portray God. It almost feels to me like this atheist doesn't actually know the position he's arguing against. That being said, you did miss the intention behind this argument, so neither of you gets any points here.
Proof number 2. A God belief is simple geography. Being raised in a Christian home decides which God you believe in. This is a textbook example of the genetic fallacy. You cannot invalidate a belief by showing how someone came to hold that belief. So this proof is about God belief, not about whether or not God exists. Put another fallacy on the board.
The way Brian presented this argument is a genetic fallacy, but the argument itself has merit. A genetic fallacy is an argument that makes conclusions based off the origin of the claim. This can actually also extend to the origins of things, objects, or people. For example, if I say, you're wrong because you got those beliefs from your dad who is unreliable, then yes, that is a genetic fallacy. But if you look at Brian's argument, his use of the word you doesn't mean you specifically. He was referring to all religious people and observing the origins of how beliefs came about. Now, given this guy is drawing hard conclusions off of this, which I disagree with, but it's an important observation on the backbone of religious claims. People tend to believe in the religion they grew up with, which is the case for any cultural aspect of a population. If you grew up in China, you're likely to speak Chinese. Therefore, religion seems to be a human-created concept that differs depending on your household, just like languages or any other cultural defining traditions. Does that mean religion or Christianity specifically is false? Absolutely not. If you make that conclusion based off this argument alone, which is what Brian seems to be doing, then you could argue that's a genetic fallacy. But the observation itself has merit because it gives us insight on how religion started and how it propagates. If you look at religion in the light that it's a human concept made up by humans, then the pieces all fit nicely together.
Proof number 3. There was no time before the Big Bang, so that means that there was no time for a God to exist in or create things in. This challenge mistakenly assumes that God is necessarily a temporal being, that he must exist and act in time. But Christians have traditionally held that God is a timeless being, outside of time prior to creation. So there's no proof here. Just a straw man fallacy.
See, this is what I mean when I said that you really need to present good arguments, otherwise you're just doing more harm than good, even if you're on the correct side of science and reasoning. Brian's argument completely fails to understand the beliefs of Christians and their portrayal of God. Now, that being said, I think Genesis and the way God is portrayed to create the earth is complete nonsense and absolutely contradicts science. For example, in the beginning, God created the earth, but earth came about over 9 billion years after the Big Bang, so it wasn't the beginning. Also, Brian is assuming that the Christians he's talking to even believes in the Big Bang. From what I see, many Christians absolutely do not believe in the Big Bang, which is ridiculous to say the least. And for those who do believe in the Big Bang, which I assume red pen logic here does, does, then there are many other aspects of science that Genesis contradicts, like the one I mentioned above. So the only way to get out of this is if you were to take the Bible as a metaphorical piece of work. At this point, it seems so arbitrary to me on what Christians choose to believe from what the Bible and what they choose to ignore. It just shows that not only are they bending the rules to reflect their beliefs, but also that modern morals, which change over time, define what they believe in. Anyway, I'll just default to my go-to argument that there just isn't sufficient evidence for Christianity or any religion. Unlike science, which describes the universe without the need for a god. Forget God existing before the Big Bang. It's not science's responsibility to prove the Bible wrong because that assumes the wrong mentality that religion is true until proven false. The burden of proof is still on religion.
Proof number 4. The Abrahamic God cannot exist because it wasn't the first God to be created. There are other gods that have been proclaimed to exist before this God. They can't all be true, so if we can deny the existence of one of these gods, we can use the same method to deny them all. If this is a good argument against God, then it's also a good argument against science, since older false concepts are often replaced by newer true concepts.
First of all, you're doing a whataboutism here. The topic of discussion is not on science. Even if you prove science or certain scientific concepts false, that doesn't mean your religion is true. Second of all, scientific concepts are replaced because new evidence proves older ideas to be wrong. That's the beauty of science. It will keep improving and becoming more accurate as we conduct more and more research and gather more evidence. But religion was never like that. It was replaced for no real particular reason. It's not like we had any hard evidence show up that proved that Christianity is more true than Greek mythology. As the people and culture evolves, so does religion. That being said, I still think Brian's argument is a horrible one, and just because religion is replaced by other religions does not disprove any individual religion. We need to argue based off the contents of the argument itself, not go searching for evidence that exists beyond the fourth wall.
Proof number 5. God either allows the devil to exist and is an accomplice, or it isn't an all-powerful God. An all-powerful and all-loving God wouldn't allow the devil to exist. Isaiah 45:7, KJV.
Okay, I'm going to cut this right here. I'm tired of seeing Christians try to defend all the terrible things that God has done or the terrible things that God has allowed to happen. It's a broken record at this point, and I think if you're a Christian and you defend God for allowing slavery, natural disasters, genetic diseases, and literally smiting people, then I think you're going too far. But since we're on this topic, please tell me why God would allow horrible genetic diseases that kill babies. That's one thing I haven't heard any Christian even try to defend.
Proof number 6. The God of the Bible is jealous of other gods. This proves that this God is not the only God. With multiple choices, only shows that there is no reason to choose just one. If a God were true, there would be no other options. Exodus 34:14. As a teacher who has given thousands of multiple choice tests over the years, I can say with some authority that multiple choices does not mean that there's no reason to choose just one. There are false answers.
This video is just a Christian going for low-hanging fruit. Brian's argument is a horrible one, and I'm not even going to try to defend him at this point. I think the best arguments against religion comes from the scientific method. If you can't follow the scientific method to prove your religion, then we can dismiss it as false. That's all there is to it, to be honest.
Proof number 7. There is no evidence that spiritual energy exists, so we can conclude that psychics, ghosts, and gods are non-existent. Otherwise, God has nothing to be made of.
The lack of evidence of things like spiritual energy does not disprove anything. It just means we can dismiss that claim. Just because there's no evidence of something does not mean that claim is false. It just means it's not true. That's a very important distinction in science. Brian is so close. All he has to do is stop after there's no evidence for spiritual energy. Just stop there. Don't draw unnecessary conclusions after that. Just say there's no evidence, therefore we can dismiss the claim, and that's all you have to do. The burden of proof is not on the atheists.
God is spirit, but he's not made of spiritual energy.
Yep, just giving ammo to the Christians. The reason why it's futile to try to disprove Christianity by pointing out logical inconsistency in their portrayal of their religion is that they will always try to twist their position. Like the claim God is not made of spiritual energy is just an assumption that they came up with based off of nothing. How do you know that? You don't. That's why when arguing against Christians, stay away from the claims in their own book. They can twist their own story. Again, just turn to the scientific method. Prove it or it's not true. That's all that needs to be said.
Proof number 8. There is no such thing as nothing. For nothing to exist would cause it to be something. Creationists believe that God created the universe out of literal nothing.
Brian, please stop. There's nothing I hate more than arguing semantics or word choices.
Proof number 9. This isn't a finely tuned world created with us in mind. The sun gives you cancer, Most of the water is undrinkable and diseases run rampant. If there was an intelligent designer, there wouldn't be any mistakes. First, just because you can't drink the ocean or antifreeze doesn't mean they're not designed. They're just designed for another purpose.
Please tell me what the purpose of genetic diseases is, why there are babies born with horrible defects. What is this other purpose? Also, what is the purpose of creating a universe that is 99.999% uninhabitable? You gave an example of the ocean being salty, but that's just a cop-out.
Second, something doesn't have to be perfectly designed in order to be intelligently designed.
Sure, but when we say intelligent here, it doesn't come with the literal meaning of intelligence, which implies good but not perfection. We just use that word really for a lack of a better word. If God actually created the world with his infinite powers for the purpose of housing human beings, he sure did a terrible job. If even us humans can think of better ways to design the earth, then surely God isn't that intelligent after all. Either that or he's malicious.
Third, imperfect design is perfectly consistent with intelligent design in a broken world.
The concept of humans and the world being broken is so stupid to me. Like, why should people nowadays pay for the sins of two idiots thousands of years ago? But then again, God has been incredibly inconsistent on his views of whether or not sin should be passed down through generations. It's almost as if he doesn't exist.
Proof number 10. Evolution is obviously proven and true. This means that we weren't created by magic and are somehow superior to the animal kingdom. No creator, no God. Biological evolution, even if true, has nothing to do with the existence of God. It has to do with God's alleged role in biology. That's all. If Darwin was right, atheists can still be wrong, as shown by a large number of theistic evolutionists.
Yes, but the concept of evolution contradicts largely with the beliefs of Christianity. You basically have to discard all of Genesis and relinquish the idea that humans are special. I agree, just because evolution is true doesn't mean the Christian God doesn't exist, but it does weaken the beliefs you have surrounding this Christian God. So Christians who also believe in evolution usually have to cherry pick from the Bible what they believe and don't believe in order to fit this view of evolution. But do you see how for these people, science defines and shapes their religion? So if you trust in science so much, why even believe in religion at all, in which science makes zero claims on? Later in the future, when science discovers more, you'll continue to reshape your vision of God to fit these scientific concepts that there's really no merit to believing in today's religious teachings at all. Instead of trying to fit your God in science, just embrace the method of knowledge seeking that has been proven to work. Alright, thank you everyone for watching. Massive shout out to Fireshard, Alan Morton, and Miss Fixit. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and I will see you in 2022.